With a minority in both houses, Republicans in the Oregon legislature spent much of the session searching for victories. They scored one in the waning hours by rallying to kill the transportation package. House Republican Leader Christine Drazan led the charge from the opposition. The Republican from Canby is an experienced legislator and narrowly lost to Tina Kotek for Oregon governor in 2022. Christine Drazan, welcome back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
It's good to be here, Ken.
Well, first of all, will we see you run for a statewide executive office again in the future?
I always say that I am here to serve the people of Oregon, and I will continue to do everything I can to try to improve the quality of life across our state and make things better for the future. But right now, we just got through a bruising legislative session, and I'm incredibly grateful that Oregonians stood with us in that fight and that we were able to deliver a victory for them.
Okay, so that's not a no.
It's not. It really is a question of when and if, and a lot of that just has to do with whether or not that's the best possible way for me to make a difference. That's all I care about, is I want to make a difference for this state. And I believe with this legislative session, with the team that we had and with Oregonians standing with us, we were able to make a difference in Salem.
Let's talk about the transportation bill. House Republicans joined with your colleagues in the Senate to kill House Bill 2025. What were your major objections to that bill?
You know, it was bad process. It was bad policy. Oregonians rightfully opposed it. It continued to double down on a status quo that was broken. We're talking about an agency that has lacked accountability for the last 8 years. That agency was given about $5 billion worth of spending back in 2017, and they agreed to do projects, fix the Rose Quarter, fix the Abernathy Bridge. And I know that your viewers know that none of those projects have been completed. Not only that, the projects that they did begin to engage on, take Abernathy for an example. $200 million was the original estimate. That project is well over $800 million today. So we're talking about an agency that has a culture that refuses to stay within their budget and produce on behalf of Oregonians. The Democrats' proposal didn't even take a glancing effort towards fixing that. They just simply doubled down on the highest tax increase in Oregon's history to continue to fund status quo. Republicans had a bill that would have balanced their budget, would have protected jobs. Our legislation did not, I want to repeat this, our legislation did not cut maintenance, preservation, and operations. Instead, our legislation took vacancy savings and redirected funding from the payroll tax to ensure that that budget could be balanced, that we restored a focus on core functions for the Department of Transportation.
You know, obviously we're talking about ODOT, the Oregon Department of Transportation. We do have a backlog of road repair and infrastructure projects in Oregon. Don't we have to raise revenue to get that taken care of?
We do raise revenue every day. None of the taxes from the past have gone away. None of them have been reduced. They continue to plug away. You pay gas taxes at the pump, fifth highest in the nation, 40 cents a gallon in the state of Oregon. And then you can have local taxes on top of that. In addition to that, we all pay more than we've ever paid before to register our cars, to pay for title insurance, to pay for title fees. All of those things continue to fund this program. What we have right now is an agency with runaway costs. Absolutely, we need to actually do those projects. We need to fill those potholes. We need to make sure that people don't get flat tires from potholes. And it doesn't mean that we have to choose to raise more taxes than Oregon has ever seen to get that done. Our Department of Transportation, in their own analysis, presented to House Republicans as we were shaping our bill, a stack of programs that they did not consider core functions of their agency. We used their recommendations to begin to refocus their efforts on core work, maintenance, preservation, operations. Let's have roads that are safe, functional, and can move goods and services and people. And instead, the Democrats decided to continue to fund climate initiatives, DEI, bike, ped, transit at levels which we have never seen before. And when you want to be all things to all people, it's just very, very expensive.
Well, here's what Governor Kotek said right after House Bill 2025 was killed.
I have workers, 600 to 700 workers in the Oregon Department of Transportation who are now facing layoffs. Because for whatever reason, people couldn't come together as Oregonians to fund that.
Are you concerned about layoffs at ODOT? That level of layoffs?
I'm concerned about the governor's lack of leadership. I met with her routinely throughout session, and I would bring up how's the transportation package going? What's going on with the transportation package? You know what her response to me was? I'm not really deeply engaged in that work. I'm in an advisory capacity in that role. She wasn't concerned about layoffs. She wasn't engaging in defense of those employees. And to be clear, we were. House Republicans proposed legislation that protected those jobs. I'm very concerned about layoffs. I'm also concerned that this governor chose to go down a political path that required layoffs for our next step. She didn't have to do it. She could have worked with us. She could have considered alternatives to her proposal. They could have been less aggressive in taxes. They could have done a process that was in plain view. Instead, they tried to buy off votes. It was a proposal that was built in the basement. That's never good. That's never good process, and it doesn't end in good policy. That's why Democrats didn't support it either. We're talking about a bad policy and a bad process that didn't earn anyone's support, and the governor's lack of leadership is what is leading to these layoffs today. They were entirely avoidable. Our bill, our proposal, prevented layoffs. I think that's really important. The Democrats in committee had the opportunity to adopt our amendment. It was moved by Representative Shelley Bossart Davis. They all voted against it, which means that they affirmatively voted for a proposal which would lead to layoffs.
Are you prepared to go back into special session if the governor calls one?
I believe that the governor created this mess, and she needs to figure out how to fix it. We had a proposal which prevented layoffs. And to be clear, they have a balanced budget today. The balanced budget that Democrats passed, that Democrats moved, assumed layoffs in that proposal. What we were told in committee was that their budget would only take vacancy savings. In the Ways and Means Subcommittee, the co-chair, in answer to my question, where do these cuts come from? Who's going to be cutting this budget? I don't want you to handpick maintenance folks that should be out there plowing the roads and cut their jobs. The Ways and Means co-chair said, this proposal takes from vacancy savings, jobs that have been open for more than 6 months.
I want to get to this. I've got a little more than a minute left in this discussion. Republicans have minorities in both houses in the Oregon legislature. How were you able to stay relevant during this session other than partisan opposition to the majority?
I would say that we are always relevant when we stand with Oregonians. It is Oregonians themselves that are the ones that need to be heard. You cannot just have a system where the only people that matter are the ones that are in power. You have to have a system that balances out voices. And the relevance for House Republicans, for Senate Republicans, is in defense and to advance the interests of Oregonians themselves who are being ignored by people who think that they're entitled to win every fight, regardless of who they harm. And in this case, they affirmatively are harming people. In one hand, they would have harmed Oregonians with the highest tax increase in the nation. On the other hand, they're choosing to harm people with layoffs that were entirely avoidable if they would have been willing to work across the aisle with us. That's the situation we find ourselves in. I believe that one of the most important things you can do in a political process is to ensure that the voices of the minority, the people that are not actively in power, have the opportunity to be heard in defense of balance, and common sense solutions to our state. We achieved that this legislative session in large part because Oregonians pushed back on their own legislators across this state and refused to accept cost increases when they just can't afford it.
We have to end it there. House Republican Leader Christine Drazan, thank you for coming back to Eye on Northwest Politics.
Thanks for having me.
Well, coming up, although the legislature did pass a record education bill, an advocate for children in Oregon says it still falls short in one important area. Our Give Me a Minute commentary right after the break.